Hello, class. This is Demetrius Wilson with Business Law, or Business 5. We're now on Chapter 2, Ethics and Business Decision Making. Obviously, ethics plays a great deal in making the right decisions, whether it be in life and or business. When we talk about things such as business law, obviously we have to speak of law first. And when you speak of things such as business ethics, we have to speak of ethics first. It's the foundation of business ethics. Our learning objectives for the chapter are: what is business ethics and why is it important? How can business leaders encourage their companies to act ethically? How do duty-based ethical standards differ from outcome-based ethical standards? What are 6 guidelines that an employee can use to evaluate whether his or her actions are ethical? And we should always go through that check-down system to understand and know if we are making the right decisions. And what types of ethical issues might arise in the context of international business transactions? Some things that are viewed as normal in certain countries are not viewed as legal here in the United States when dealing with businesses outside of our domestic realm. So in business ethics, ethics is a study of right and wrong, right? We know what's right, we know what's wrong behavior, whether an action is fair, right, or just. And sometimes people have a blurred gray line in terms of what is right and wrong. And it doesn't just mean that it's illegal. Like deep down in your core, what do you believe? Is it right or is it wrong? In business, ethical decisions are the application of moral and ethical principles to the marketplace and to the workplace. So these are now utilizing your ethical decisions that you make every day and in life, but now we're focusing specifically in terms of your day-to-day business. So why is business ethics important? So directors and officers owe a complex set of ethical duties to the company, shareholders, customers, community, employees, and suppliers. And you can look at those customers, community, employees, suppliers, and also add in shareholders. And that's what makes up the stakeholders. So that's anybody having stake within a company. Not the same as shareholders, because shareholders are the people who own shares within the company. But stakeholders are everybody that has some stake within the company. When these duties conflict, ethical dilemmas arise and are created. So, if your manager or boss asks you to do something and it's not something that you believe to be right and true and just, it puts you in an awkward situation. The moral minimum. So this is just this. I'm just going to do the minimum in terms of what I need to do to not get caught or get fined or things of that nature. So minimum standard for ethical business behavior really means the bare minimum compliance with the law. So gray areas, as I spoke about before, in the law is when the law is silent on actions legality, right? So it's legal, but it's really frowned upon. Like cutting in front of somebody in line is not illegal, but it's definitely frowned upon. In addition, courts decide on a case-by-case basis, looking for responsible acts or foreseeable results. So short-run profit maximization. And let me give you an example before I get into these 2 check marks. A lot of times especially with managers, they get bonuses. Now some managers make decisions for the company that are only dealing with short-term profit maximization, mostly for themselves. I want my bonus, so I'm going to do what's best for me within this year. But what if you could do something that's best for the company for 5 years? Do you have the wherewithal to say, you know what, I'm going to make the right decision, and I know the right decision is the decision that's not going to give me the big bonus right here, right now, but the company will do great and I'll get a bigger bonus down the line. Well, most of us are going to work towards that immediate bonus because I don't know if I'll be at the company 5 years down the line. So some argue that a corporation's only goal should be profit maximization, right? Leave the rest of the stuff to everybody else. If people want to donate to charities on their own, then they can. That's what a certain percentage of the people believe. And then corporate executives should diminish or distinguish between short-term and long-term profit maximization. And that's what I was, kind of referring to in terms of bonuses, right? Is what you're doing going to help the company right now and later, or is it just going to help the company and yourself in your pocketbook right now? Another one of the cases that you guys can go ahead and look up, United States versus Skilling. Skilling's conviction was upheld. Court rejected exception to the Honest Services Fraud Act for keeping the stock prices high, right? So you'll be able to check that one out on your own. So is there importance of ethical leadership? Yes, 100% there is, because if you see your manager doing something, you're going to feel that it's okay, that it's not frowned upon. Attitude of top management. Management must be committed to creating an ethical company, right? If it's not an ethical company, then a lot of people can see through that, and they might not be in existence very long. Management must set realistic goals for production, right? So if especially like in a sales environment, you want to set realistic goals, because if you set unrealistic goals, then they're going to find a way to cheat the system and bring in what's probably not good business. Management must deal with unethical issues quickly, right? So you need to get in front of those things, and if it happens, then get right in front of it. Don't wait for for it to be a month or two later to actually act on it. Unethical behavior of owners and managers. And I see it all the time. Sent some information to a vice president one time and sent it back to me, and she said, I understand the numbers, but I need for you to get creative. That's not going to work for me. So, obviously it's, those are decisions do you make. Do you send it back, or do you say, okay, well, I'm going to try and fix it for her within the confines of what I know to be true and right. And periodic evaluation. We'll see a lot of that, now that people are really focusing on, the aspects of ethics. You'll see a lot more classes, a lot more things that are tied to that notion. So creating ethical codes of conduct. Codes must be well written, right? So they can be understood by everyone. Companies should provide ethics training to employees so they understand what they can do, what they can't do, what they should do, and what they shouldn't do. The Sarbanes-Oxley Act, you'll have a video in the modules about this and web-based reporting. So the Sarbanes-Oxley Act requires confidential ethics reporting system to raise red flags about practices, right? So a lot of times people, they're whistleblowers, and they know something's affecting the company in a negative way, and they don't know what to do. So they've created things in checks and balances such as the Sarbanes-Oxley Act to ensure that there's some type of audit going on. Ethical transgressions by financial institutions. There's also a video that's posted about a gentleman who knew and understood what Bernie Madoff was before everybody else. So be sure to check that out. Corporate stock buyback. So this is a tricky game right here. So many of the greatest financial institutions have gone bankrupt, taken over by the federal government, or bailed out by the United States taxpayers, and that's us. And then in a buyback process, management believes stock value is below fair value. Instead of issuing dividends, it buys its own shares on the open market, boosting the price of stock, right? So we're buying all our shares, and people are seeing the same thing there. So they're buying more of our shares as well. They must know something that we don't know. Executives benefit because of their value of their stock options goes up. So bonuses, as we talked about earlier, like if it's a short-term goal, do you work towards only that short-term goal, or do you try and work towards something that'll help and affect the company 5 years later? So in terms of bonuses, it's a perverse system. Bonuses and salaries before the crisis. Some bonuses were paid early, right? So you can't go back and get them. Congress acts to limit bonuses in the American Recovery and Reinvestment Tax Act of 2009. So what type of approaches can we have to ethical reasoning? Duty-based ethics derived from religious and philosophical principles, right? So religious ethical standards, Kantian ethics, rights and principles, right? Those are duty-based, right? I'm going to do this because it's my duty to tell the truth and not to lie. Outcome-based ethics seek to ensure a given outcome. So we have A to B. We start off with B, and then we work our way backwards to A to see exactly how we would get from A to B, right? That's kind of a tougher process, but it's very, very effective. So outcome-based ethics seek to ensure a specific given outcome. So we also have religious ethical standards that'll always come into play when we're speaking about ethics. The rightness or wrongness of an action is usually judged according to its conformity to an absolute rule that commands a particular form of behavior, right? So as you see at the very beginning, it says the rightness or wrongness of an action is usually judged according to its conformity, right? Well, if you're conforming to, what's right, then you don't have to worry about there being any problems there. The motive of the actor is irrelevant in judging the rightness or the wrongness of the action, right? So it's not your duty to actually judge it. These rules often involve an element of compassion, right? So, you provide people with compassion, it'll go a long, long way. Kantian ethics, so premised on the behalf that general guiding principles for moral behavior can be derived from human nature. The categorical imperative, this is from Immanuel Kant, is a central postulate that of Kantian ethics. The rightness or wrongness of an action is judged by estimating the consequences that would follow if everyone in society performed an act under that consideration. So if you went and stole your neighbor's newspaper, and then you realize, okay, well, what would happen if everybody in the world stole the next door neighbor's newspaper, right? They wouldn't be too happy or too keen about it, right? If everyone in society performed the act under consideration, would society still be here, or would it be pure mayhem? Principles of rights. This principle derives from the belief that every duty gives rise to a corresponding right. The belief as fundamental rights is a deeply embedded feature of Western culture. The ethicality of an action is judged by how the consequences of the action will affect the rights of others. Outcome-based ethics, utilitarianism. So an action is ethical based on whether it produces the greatest amount of good for the greatest number of people upon which it has an effect. Cost-benefit analysis, use these in my personal life, in professional life, collegiate life. Cost-benefit analysis must be performed to determine the effects of competing alternatives on a person's affected. So if you have a cost-benefit analysis, we're going to say, hey, this costs this amount, right? Whether it be a person or a machine, and this costs this amount. Maybe this machine is going to last longer, so we get more depreciation. Just don't know. But I can tell you that a cost-benefit analysis will most of the time, and from what I've seen all the time, lead you to the correct path. The best alternative is the one that produces the greatest good for the greatest number of people. And, there's some great videos on there about that. Like I remember seeing in Batman where, there's a bunch of people that were getting transported from a prison. And there were these other people. It was like, some families, kids and things of that nature on another subway train. And they were being forced to make a decision. Say one of these two trains is going to blow up, right? Does the person hit the button and blow themselves up, or do they hit the button and then save the other side, or do they hit the button so that the other side blows up? Very interesting. If any guys watch Batman, you remember that scene. An action is ethical based on whether it produces the greatest good for the greatest number of people upon which it has effect. A cost-benefit analysis must be performed to determine the effects of competing alternatives on the persons affected. The best alternative is the one that produces the greatest good for the greatest number of people. So like I gave you the Batman example, greatest good for the greatest number of people. Corporate social responsibility, big deal. Wasn't really a big deal, especially in the 80s. Maybe came in the tail end of the 90s. Corporations should be interested in impact on civil rights, environment, consumer protection, employee safety, and welfare, right? So it goes a little bit of charity, a little bit of work from your employees or associate goes a long way. You have your stakeholder approach, and then you have your corporate citizenship, right? So stakeholder approach, you go as a stakeholder. You're not a shareholder, but you're a stakeholder. And all these things affect the company, and what can I do to fix that? So make sure that you check out stakeholder approach and stakeholder and corporate citizenship. Case 2.2, want to check that out. Fall Cutter Capital Group Inc. Versus Securities Exchange Commission in 2007. So the SEC's decision was not arbitrary or abuse of discretion. Firm just focused on its CEO and its shareholder profits. So, remember, shareholder is people that own shares of the company. A stakeholder just says, I have a stake. I don't necessarily have money, but I have a stake in the company. Whether I work there, whether I'm in the neighborhood, things of that nature, just depends. Making ethical business decisions. So you have 6 guidelines. You look at the law, you look at rules and procedures, you look at values, your own conscience, promises, and heroes. So making ethical business decisions, practical solution to corporate ethics questions are make an inquiry, broad discussion with all stakeholders represented, a decision, come to a consensus, justification, does a consensus withstand moral scrutiny, and evaluation, do the solution satisfy corporate values and shareholders. So business ethics on a global level, American-owned companies must be traded in cross-cultural business practices. Monitoring the employment practice of foreign suppliers, right? That's one way. Corporate watch groups can disseminate information instantly around the world. Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, bribes and accounting practices, right? So in certain countries, we'll talk about this, they call it greasing. Like, hey man, it's just normal to grease the guy's palms, put $300 in his hand, versus just saying that I'm not going to do that. And they say if you say that you're not going to do that, well, if everybody else is doing it, then you're not going to get the appropriate shot at at doing so. So a lot of times, people think that, greasing's okay. And it's a very gray line in terms of, how much you can get away with and how much you can't. And that's it for Chapter 2, ending on business ethics on a global level. So you should go in Chapter 2. You'll see this lecture. You'll see the PowerPoint posted just in case you want to hear my voice talking about it. You'll see a few videos to watch. They're very good videos, so please be sure to watch them. You'll complete your homework assignment, which is on business ethics, on accounting fraud, and then you have your Chapter 2 quiz, and that's it. So as you know, things will continue to fly by very fast and very quickly because I don't know. That's just typically how it goes. I think that class will run so slow and steady, and then all of a sudden it's the end of the first 2 weeks in spring, and everybody's doing well and keeping up with their quizzes, tests, and assignments, and we're good to go. So again, it's Demetrius Wilson, Business 5. This has been Chapter 2. If you need any help or assistance, be sure to contact me. And, typically via email is the best way to do it. You'll get the quickest response. But send me an email and I'll be able to assist. And that's all. So I want you all to have a good day and a great week.